Shall we make a start, Brent?
Yeah, we've clicked over to 9:31.
9:31, yeah. So
Go for it, Laurie.
yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Amazon 3. If you missed Amazon 1 and 2, well, sorry about that, but Amazon 3 has arrived, and hopefully you'll get plenty out of today's session. So my name is Laurie Beagle. I'm Managing Director at Forums International, and my cohort today is Mr. Brent Cumming from Let's Talk Credit. So for those who don't know either of us, Forums International, we just started our 7th year. So and we run 10 forums up on the screen now. So we're very much we've got international ones as well as UK focused. Some are industry specific and some across industry. I won't go into the detail, but you can see it on the screen. If you'd like to get any more information on any of our forums, please have a look at our website. So hand over to Brent.
Yeah, similar. We do a very similar thing, but in different industries. So I worked for Experian for 30 years, got made redundant, and the forums that I ran with Experian moved them over to Let's Talk Credit. I think already I'm leaving my 2nd year and about to enter my 3rd year, so it seems like only yesterday. But those are the forums I run. For those of you that don't know me, various different industries there. And I think on the next slide, Laurie, is my contact details and website. So if you need to get in touch, that's me. I'm sure that photo is becoming quite old now. My beard's much grayer than that. But I'm going to keep it there. I don't care. It's fine. So yeah, carry on, Laurie. Over to you.
Well, it's a bit like my picture. I've only got pictures with my glasses on. And actually, I don't wear glasses anymore apart from reading because I've had my cataracts done. So there you go. I know you all needed to know that. So right, okay. Just to give you a little bit of flavour of today, and Brent and myself are going to do a Pinky and Perky act today. So we're going to so we'll probably end up interrupting each other quite a bit. So anyway, the objective of today is to share ideas, experiences, and with a view to finding the best solutions for trading with Amazon. I'm sure a lot of you have had years and years of experience and loads of probably war stories, and it's very key that we hear from you today. There is a reaction button and there's also a chat button. So please, if you would want to say something, put your hand up or put the question in chat, and we'll get to make sure that we keep an eye on that and make sure that we pick up all those questions, and also hear from you if you've got points to make. So as I said there, it's open, interactive, but it is a protected discussion, and we're not asking you to be giving the company secrets away on this, but we want, at the end of the day, bottom line is we want you to get benefit out of this and learn something new about how to trade with Amazon. Brent, anything to add to that?
No, I think audience participation would be great. And I think certainly with regards to communication, I know Zoom can be a bit crazy. I think we've got 54 on this morning. Like Laurie says, if you want to use the reactions button, if you want to draw attention to yourself, bottom of your screen there, bottom middle, there's the row of options. And if you click on reactions, there's a button in there called raise hand. And if you click that, then myself and Laurie can see that, and then we can move over to you when the time's right. If you've got anything to add to the conversation or that particular question or topic. And then I think if you go back in and you can click lower hand. So there you go. So I think that's all really. Just I suppose the other thing is just try and keep yourself on mute, so there's not any background noise. Myself and Laurie do have the power to mute. So if there's any noise in the background, then we will mute you. Okay, Laurie?
That includes me. I'll make sure I'm on mute as well because I'm living on a building site and you may hear beep, beep, beep in the background. And Brent, it is not my pacemaker, as you said the other week. So, right, okay. I'm sure we're all very experienced Zoomers anyway. So, okay, let's moving on. This is the agenda today. We've got a start time, we've got a finish time, but we haven't put any times in between. And but these are almost the subjects we're hoping to cover today. But we're really pleased to have as our keynote speaker Tim O'Grady, founder and operations director at Minster FB, and Tim, I'm sure, will tell us a little bit more about what Minster FB does in a few seconds' time. So I think we're over to you now, Tim.
Great, thanks, guys. Can I share my screen? I'll get my presentation up.
Please do.
Can you see that in presentation mode?
No.
Sorry, is that in presentation mode or is it still in?
I haven't got that. Oh, I think I've got to go to view options on mine.
Hang on, sir. That's right. I think I'll just. How's that? Does that come up now?
No.
Well, for me, I've got to go to the top of my screen where it says view options, and then I can then, instead of Laurie's presentation, I've got to go to Tim's. It might be that because you're still sharing yours, Laurie.
Sorry.
Shall I, if I stop sharing mine?
Yeah.
There you go.
And there you go. So, right, there we go.
Yeah.
Everybody see Tim's presentation?
Yes, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Thank you. Okay, so trading on Amazon. Let's talk about a little bit about us first. So as I was just introduced, my name is Tim O'Grady. I'm co-founder and operations director of a company called Minster FB. The FB stands for Food Brokers. We named ourselves because we were primarily in the grocery industry when we started, but we've broken out of that, so we kind of just dropped it. And, we thought we'd keep it in the name anyway. So we've been around for 10 plus years. We were set up at the bequest of Amazon, really. My colleague James Murray was pitching to Amazon to do some supplier engagement work, and they had a new head of grocery come in, and he basically was like really interested in what you're saying, but I'm not going to pay you, which is often a problem in business. So James, before he walked away, he said, "Oh, are there any other options?" And the guy at the time, Bram, was from America, and he said, "Look, we have the broker model in the States, whereby we'll drip feed information into the broker, and the broker will go out and recruit suppliers and effectively work for the supplier to get them Amazon ready." So we went away, we went out to the States, met a few of the brokers that we were introduced to, and we came back and set up, and here we are now. So we are a end-to-end agency. So we don't typically do consultancy. We're only after the end-to-end business. Now, there are a lot of businesses out there specializing in advertising particularly, so Amazon advertising, the pay-per-click on site. We kind of came to that last because it wasn't available when we started the business. So fundamentally, we have these three pillars of our business. We have the commercial element, where we obviously maintain client relationships and work with Amazon vendor managers on profitability, mix, cost, promotions, AVNs, the Amazon vendor negotiations, what they renamed to JVP, and stock management, and just the day-to-day troubleshooting. So we kind of have a point of contact within a business, and we'll deal with all aspects on a day-to-day basis, weekly meetings, etc. Operationally, so the bit I'm in charge of, so I've got a catalogue team where we create, optimize, monitor and manage the catalogue, and that's on a daily basis. So we look at every single product that we look after every single day to make sure the title, the images, the description is optimized. We also make sure that we've got the buy box, so essentially that Amazon are selling the product that we've sold to Amazon. Fundamentally, we are a first-party business, so we trade with people, or we look after people who trade with Amazon directly, although we do have some who also use the seller central model as well. Part part of my role particularly is I work with suppliers, I've got the word train and develop there, but also troubleshoot. So if there are issues with inbound logistics, particularly around finance operations, so predominantly if we're working with a business, it's people like yourselves that I will get involved with. In fact, Sally, I think we used to work together when we looked after booths a few years ago. So hello. And we do quite a lot of work to reconcile ledgers and recover as much of that cost as we possibly can. And then the third pillar is obviously around the advertising, which is massive on Amazon now. So there's the different types of advertising, be it sponsored product or display ads on Amazon. We've got our own internal model, which we use to very clearly demonstrate ROI on different types of, we call it the sell model, on how we advertise different products and different types of keywords. And we also do DSP. So I don't know if you're aware, but Amazon as well do off-site advertising. So you can pay, it's quite a chunk of cash to access DSP, but essentially what you're doing is targeting people off Amazon to then get them into the Amazon infrastructure. So that's on sites like IMDb, even through the Google network. So DSP is very effective about brand building. And fundamentally underlying everything we do, essentially we're a data-driven business. So we've built APIs to access Amazon's data. We pull that all into our central database and create business intelligence for both internal and external projections. So we can tell suppliers that we work with which are their most repeated purchased products versus what investment they're putting into them. We can essentially target either low performing products or encourage high performing products with additional deals, etc. So everything we do, even down to product titles on Amazon, we do A/B testing against those. So everything we do is data driven essentially, to understand exactly what's going on. So that's a little bit about us. Just some of our clients there, just as a flavour. So fairly big household names on there, and yeah, that's just a section of them. There's quite a lot of us, and the graph just shows our essentially our revenue over the last 10 years. So as you can see, it's been a long, hard slog getting to where we are now, but we've kind of firmly hitched our horse and cart to Amazon, and we've been going at it for a long time. So there's a lot of us doing a lot of work for some clients that are very happy with what we're doing. So what I want to do, so Amazon, as you all know, and I think Laurie, you already put it on the slides about Amazon being difficult to trade with. I'm not here to bash Amazon. They are a complex, large organisation that can be difficult to trade with. I think fundamentally, though, they are a rules-based organisation. If you understand the rules, then you can play their game. And in our business, we always say to stay above the line, which essentially means that we always try and maintain ownership and be accountable and responsible. So we stay away from blaming and making excuses around Amazon. So just some of the words that we try and do there. And this is more around training some of our new guys who can be quite negative when they see some of the impacts of the stuff that Amazon do. So yeah, my aim is always to stay above the line and not bash them too much. So why Amazon? So I'm just going to take you through this presentation. It's very much around why businesses are trading with Amazon. I'm going to go through a simplified operational process and kind of talk about some of the pain points, talk about the pain points, talk about some potential, maybe not solutions, but options to look at. And then there's already been some questions submitted. So if it's all right with you guys, I'll go straight to those at the end of the presentation, talk through those, because you may well have the same question. So we can wrap them all up together. But as Laurie and Brent said, please chuck questions in the chat box. I'm more than happy to have a discussion afterwards. So why Amazon? As you can see here, funny enough, very similar to the shape of our revenue in terms of the Amazon revenue that's moving forward. We've just put a box around that 2011. That's when we started working with them. So as a business, $48 billion, they're now heading way towards that $400 billion mark and past it. And as a business, you can see on the right-hand side, the UK is tiny in comparison to the States, but it is just growing and growing and growing, with the rest of the world following quite significantly. So that's the likes of Australia, Singapore, Mexico. So the business is just incredibly strong and powerful brand around the world, which is why so many people are obviously trading with them. Just to give you an idea, oh, sorry, I meant to blank that slide now. Anyway, we've got a client who we started working with them. In fact, let me just quickly take that off because let me just quickly delete that because that should have been there. Essentially, what I was trying to suggest in this is, apologies about this. Sorry, this is just showing that one of our clients, we took them on in 2018, and again, following that shape of the Amazon curve, that they've just massively increased their sales over in relatively a short period of time. You know, so yeah, under £1 million in 2017, and we've helped them to get to 5 million plus, and their goal is to hit the 10 million in the next 2 years. So, you know, and this is just a mix of their products, so it's irrelevant, but the scale of the Amazon business is huge. That's the point in front of me. So kind of the key question, I guess you guys are interested in, is why are Amazon deducting from remittances? So let's just talk through the different reasons behind it, the different deductions that Amazon make. I'm sure you're all really aware of this, but just to make sure. So trading terms, so you'll see these on as either co-ops or SPAs. So essentially this is agreed back margin between your commercial team and Amazon, and it's deducted monthly based on the volume received in the previous month. So Amazon base all their calculations on net receipts. So often there's a disparity between sales out from your systems versus sales into Amazon, and that's around timing, around when purchase orders are both placed and delivered, but also more importantly when they're scanned in. So a receipt is when a product is scanned in at Amazon, not when it's delivered. So kind of last year around May time, we saw inbound receipt kind of going from 1 day to up to 10 days, depending on different fulfillment centers. So we were seeing huge delays in actually getting stock booked into Amazon. We employ quite a few ex-Amazonians. One came to us out of a local fulfillment center, and when she left, Amazon were rolling between 4 to 5 million units per day in one fulfillment center. So, and they've got 32 active fulfillment centres in the UK at the moment. So, yeah, it's a huge volume of stock that they just had on their dock that they weren't putting away. So essentially, it was just sat waiting. Shortage claims, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit more detail because everyone's going to be interested in this. It's deducted when the invoice is due for payment, and you're unable to challenge anything beforehand, and I'll talk about why in a moment. Operational chargebacks are infractions to Amazon's processes in the previous month. So if there's been any deviance to Amazon's protocol, then they fine you, and you've only got 30 days to challenge that with appropriate evidence. Price claim is always an interesting one. So Amazon will only ever pay the price on a purchase order. So when you confirm a purchase order, that's when you enter into an agreement to supply with Amazon. So if there are issues with catalog, or what we see quite a lot is unvalidated Edi orders. So this is if you've got Edi implemented to get orders straight into your systems. If Amazon place an order with a price that's incorrect and your system accepts it, that is the only price that Amazon will ever pay. So whenever we do an Edi implementation, we always insist on some sort of gatekeeper process to ensure that there is a way of capturing incorrect information and not accepting that order. You've probably seen AP audits. So this is where Amazon retrospectively do a reconciliation and realise they've actually got more stock that they haven't actually paid you for yet. So they'll both pay the invoice, but they'll also then deduct any terms due on that volume as well. So you'll see that come through. We also see if you've got a returns agreement, and some returns agreements include the fact that you pay for the freight. that will come through as an AP audit as well. So they'll do an annual, either annual or we have got one client quarterly. They'll do an AP audit to recover the cost of freight, which returning stock to you. And the kind of the biggie that we see in terms of cash value is provision of receivables. So this is where they're doing a calculation that looks at your projected outgoings and the projected incomings from the account, and they just basically place a massive chunk of cash on your account to make sure that they get paid. So typical issue with this is if you, for whatever reason, there's a delay in getting your invoices loaded to Amazon. So Amazon see that they are going to deduct X, Y, and Z on a monthly basis, but if your invoices are slow or they're not getting loaded or there's a problem with EDI, Amazon can't see any cash to essentially deduct that against. They just place that provision for receivable against your account just to ensure that they hold and they get paid. The other issue we see with this is around operational chargebacks. So we actually had worked with a supplier once where they got awful performance from their carrier and their fines were greater than their sales. So as a result, Amazon were just getting very nervous of the state of the account, that basically they couldn't sell enough stock to pay for their fines. So I'm sure you've all seen that on your ledgers. So what can you do about it? That's the kind of the key piece. And I'll just touch on each of these in a bit of detail. So trading terms. So you'll see things like damage allowance, marketing allowance, markdown allowance. You'll see transport. You might see subscribe and save, for example. So these are all say back margin that Amazon charge on addition to the margin, the front margin around the cost price versus retail price difference. The only way to challenge these is through the annual AVN, the Amazon Vendor Negotiation, or JVP. And obviously that's very much around your commercial teams doing that. And it's really important that they are understand what those terms are, understand what they're signing up to, because they're all annual agreements that often roll, and understand what the net impact is. So for example, subscribe and save used to be a flat 5% fee, whereas Amazon have now moved to a variable fee. So depending on which market you're in, that can either be favourable or very unfavourable to you. So for example, we've got a client who supplies dog food. So obviously to get a dog food on a regular order is very logical, and most consumers do it. So if they were on but they're not, but if they were on a variable subscribe and save, their deduction would be incredibly high because loads of people sign up for it. Whereas if your market is very much around a one-off purchase, a vacuum cleaner, for example, subscribe and save isn't going to hurt you too much. So making sure your commercial teams are on top of that annual AVN is really important. Shortage claims is often the biggest issue, and the straightforward straightforward advice there is always dispute loading a POD and make sure it's a valid POD. So what do Amazon describe as a valid POD? Well, it's got to clearly show your the delivery, so essentially the order going into Amazon. The unique reference on it cannot be their purchase order. So they ideally want the invoice number that you are going to invoice them on. That's the ideal. If not, you need to show some link between the reference and the delivery note and the invoice number. To become a valid POD, it has to be stamped by the FC, showing that the vehicle was on site on the date, the time, and which FC they were at. Unless it's got those pieces of information on it, Amazon will just reject it as a non-valid POD. I've put investigate there because most of the time we see shortage claims, and I'll talk about this a lot as I go forward, that once the business starts doing some real root cause analysis, you'll find a problem somewhere. Typically it's with the setup of the product. So it could be that the barcode's wrong, it could be that the case configuration's wrong, it could be that the ASNs aren't being raised correctly, but everything that we've kind of done in the past all points back to a catalogue issue which drives shortage claims. Next one is around operational chargebacks. Now, I've very simply put, adhere to processes. I know that's far easier said than done. Amazon have got a huge set of complex rules around delivery and how to get product to them. my advice there is make sure that your operational teams understand what they're trying to hit. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. I'm going to break the process down, so we'll come on to that in a minute. Price claims, I've already said, EDI gatekeeper, really important. If you've not got that already, I'd really recommend you start looking at that, because it's the only way of eliminating price claims. And price claims are generally price claims are generally created due to catalogue issues. And I'm just going to talk briefly now about relationship, and it might help put some context around why you get catalogue issues. So, in a typical environment, Sainsbury's has a relationship to a supplier, Butcher's dog food. Butchers have a relationship to 50 products. So there's that clear hierarchy between retailer, supplier, and product. With Amazon, that model is different. Amazon has a relationship with 50 products, of which Butcher's dog food can supply a number of them. So basically what I'm trying to say is Amazon are supplier agnostic. Even if you're the manufacturer, they won't necessarily order from you. What they're trying to do is ensure that they get the best price for the customer and for them, and it's delivered within the time frame that they want it been delivered. So it's really important to understand that, because essentially what happens is the product is the important thing on Amazon, not the supplier. So whoever has got what's called the buy box, so whoever's stock is the cheapest and in stock, so whether that's third party or first party, sorry, if it's third party, then anyone can basically overwrite the quality of the listing. So everything's based at ASIN level, so the Amazon stock inventory number. So everything is around that product ID. So even if, and this is why we check everything every day, even if that is your product and you're managing it, if a third party swoops in and offers a lower price, their details for that product can overwrite it. Now, if they put a comedy price in, then that's what Amazon will take, and they'll keep that, and they will keep that price moving forward until until several things happen. The product might get crapped out, which is an Amazon term for can't realize a profit. I'll give you an example. We have a product that we were selling to Amazon for £20. At the start of lockdown 1, a retailer was trying to clear their stock of that same product, and they sold it to Amazon for £10 just to get rid of their stock because it was locked down. So as a result, when that stock sold through, when Amazon started placing orders with our supplier, they started placing orders for £10, not £20, because they believe that that's what they could then get it for. So it's really important that you manage your catalogue and manage that pricing, because Amazon doesn't care about you as a supplier at all. They care about the product. In terms of AP audits, there's not a lot you can do about them. I have spent hours and hours and hours validating AP audits against stock into Amazon, and I've never found one yet where Amazon weren't right. So the volumes that they claim that they've received, every time I've done it at line level, it's accurate. Provisions for receivable. So as I said earlier, ensuring invoices are submitted as quickly as possible absolutely helps with this, and minimizing shortages and chargebacks. And again, that comes back to the root cause analysis and understanding the operational process, which we will go into. So this is really high level. So we can go into a bit more detail later if you want. So process of preventing shortages, price claims, and operational chargebacks. So just taking a typical Amazon order cycle. Amazon in the yellowish box, order placed on a Monday, and then with the supplier, the order's either rekeyed manually or it's EDI'd across. And then once the stock levels are checked, the order's then acknowledged back to Amazon. And at that point, the contract is in place to supply. Now, the important thing here is that Amazon want that order confirmed on the same day that the purchase order is placed. A lot of people think it's 24 hours. It's not. It's the same business day. And the reason behind that goes back to what I was telling you about earlier around the buy box, that if you cannot supply that product because you're out of stock, for example, Amazon then place purchase orders on other suppliers who say that they've got that stock. So they want to know as quickly as possible that whether you can or can't supply, and they will then place orders elsewhere. There are no penalties if you say that a product's out of stock. So if they ask for 100 units of a product and you've only got 50, supply the 50, that's fine. There's no issue with that. There's more of an issue if you say that, yes, you'll supply 100, but then you only supply the 50, because they'll fine you for that. So that's the first fine, is making sure that the orders are accepted on the day that they're placed. So if you do that, you won't get fined. So on Tuesday, potentially, within your warehouse, the order's picked, the advanced shipment notification is raised and is sent to Amazon, which basically clarifies the stock that's been sent, and it's the first step in booking a delivery into the warehouse. Typically, if you're using a WMS with an EDI enabled system, you'll probably do on the pick confirmation, you'll probably create an order invoice there, and you'll probably send them via EDI. Potentially then on either the Tuesday or the Wednesday, your transport, either your internal transport team or your carriers will be booking the delivery, and they'll be booking the delivery for either the Thursday or the Friday. Now, it's really important when orders are placed, Amazon creates what's called a ship window. So a typical order that's placed on a Monday, ship window is between the Monday and the Friday. So they want that stock delivered within the 5 working days. If your team, for whatever reason, cannot meet the ship window on the order, then they really should be cancelling that order down, because if you deliver outside of that ship window, then there is a fine for PO on time compliance. So Amazon will be fining you if you don't do that. You've also then got the issue with delivery itself, so getting the product, getting the vehicles in at the right time. Let's just break some of this down in a little bit more detail, actually. So I'll talk about pain points. So going back to this typical order process, so on a Monday, if the line's set up incorrectly, orders will be wrong, they just shouldn't be accepted. And we say time and time again, we see this, that the catalogue is so fundamental to everything that if that's not understood, validated and correct, then you're going to have problems. As I mentioned before, you've got to make sure you're acknowledging the order on the same day, but make sure the barcodes and the hierarchy is correct, because it's just so critical. And once a barcode is in Amazon, you cannot change it. So loading new lines to Amazon is both tricky, but it is really important to get it right straight away. I've mentioned it several times, I'm not going to go further. EDI gatekeeper process, definitely need to be looking at that. As I mentioned before, confirmation order is acceptance supply. The ship window is critical to understand. And the other thing is not just whether you can deliver it within the ship window that is typically Monday to Friday, it's understanding that the ship windows do vary. So we frequently see Amazon placing what we call forward orders. So this is where they are placing an order on Monday for delivery in May, for example. Now we see 2 key issues in that. One is people don't realise, so they deliver it by Friday, so they get a compliance fine because they've ignored the ship window, or they do see that, they do accept the order, and then that's when things start going wrong. So either in May, the stock is then no longer available, so you can't fulfill the order. Amazon may cancel the order in between, because even though you've accepted it, they suddenly decide that they don't need that stock. So you've potentially recorded the sale, which then gets cancelled down. And the biggest issue we find is that stock is often booked against the wrong POs, particularly against forward orders, because essentially if you've confirmed that, Amazon have got a PO that's open, so when they scan product in, they potentially scan it against the wrong purchase order. So our advice is always to ignore future orders, because it just doesn't work for the majority of the businesses that we work with. It's just difficult. So other issues we see on pick, pack and dispatch. If there are shorts and orders aren't sent out, or items aren't sent out, it's really important to go back and decrement both the purchase order and ensure the ASN is raised correctly to the actual volume of stock that's been sent out. The next kind of pain points that we see around labelling and building pallets. So efficient receive is now mandatory. Efficient receive is any product below Amazon's what they call sortable requirements, which that's about 25 by 35 by 45 centimeters. Think of it as a small microwave. Anything-ish that size or smaller, it will go on Amazon's conveyor belt, so they class that as sortable. For any products like that, efficient receive is mandatory. When efficient receive is either license plate receive or it is GTIN receive. So this is either you have to relabel every product on the, every case with a unique Amazon barcode that either you generate or they generate, or you use the 14-digit GTIN on the outside of the case, but you have to be then using something called GDSN, so the Global Data Network Synchronization Network. So this is where you pass your barcode and product hierarchy information to Amazon, and they accept that via essentially the GLN, and it allows them to scan the product in and know essentially what's in that box. So if you're not conforming to either of those standards, there is a fine there, and that fine is just going to get bigger and bigger as Amazon try and convince people to adopt efficient receive. ASNs, I've mentioned, make sure it reflects the stock sent. Expiry dates for food products are now mandatory, so ensure that the expiry date's added. Also, there is obviously a fine, and make sure the ASN is raised more than 24 hours before delivery. That's fairly obvious, but only invoice lines that are sent, and we'd always recommend using EDI for your accuracy, particularly if you've your WMS can just create that as a flow process that's far more accurate than getting people to rekey onto Vendor Central. Delivery. So all palletized deliveries must be booked on Carport, that is now Carrier Central, and it must be within the ship window. So if you, for example, on the Tuesday, try and book a delivery for Friday, but Amazon say they can't accommodate you to the following Monday, in theory, that's fine, because although that's outside of the ship window, if you can prove via the email that Amazon send back to book the delivery that you requested the delivery within the ship window, but it was Amazon's issue that they couldn't accept it, then you will be able to challenge any dispute there. One of the big ones that's always a problem we find with people who are doing deliveries themselves rather than using a carrier, particularly one of the preferred or nominated carriers, is that Amazon issue a delivery time. So they might say 11 o'clock on Friday morning. So your vehicle must be on site between 10:30 and 11:30. And if it's not, then you get a £425 fine. So that's a really significant chunk of cash, and it literally can be a minute at either side out. So it's really important that people are aware of that and manage their process to ensure that doesn't happen. And I'm going to put it there as on suitable transport. So majority of FCs won't accept Lutons, they won't accept transit vans, etc. So make sure that whoever's doing the deliveries for you knows all the requirements for delivering into an FC. Just quickly talk about receipt as well. So the way that Amazon scan in, if you've ever been to an Amazon FC, their inbound dock is just a pile of stock. It's the most awful thing you've ever seen. And people just go and grab stock and start checking it in. So if you deliver an order of 3 pallets, the likelihood of those 3 pallets being checked in together is virtually 0. Which is why labeling is so important. And often that's where we see issues with stock receipt going wrong and creating shortage claims, because an ASN label is put on one pallet, not on every pallet, or a box, not every box. And straight away that causes issues, because even though you might have your brand on your product or on the outside of your box, Amazon don't know who that's come from, because potentially multiple people are supplying your product into Amazon. So labeling is so critical. Amazon will start scanning using barcodes. So everything they do is barcode driven. When they scan a product in, it should link to a product, an ASIN, which will then on their scanners show them the image of the product that it should be. Now, typically, if you've got a visible product and they can see what that visible product looks like on the screen, if they don't match, so if you've got either a color variation or you've got a range change and it's kind of moving into spring, summer, and it's a slightly different color, Amazon can reject stock based on the fact that it doesn't look like what's currently live on a site. So it's really important that your range and your catalog is as up to date as it needs to be. Mixed pallets are a particular challenge if all units look the same. So if you've just got a load of brown boxes going into Amazon and they're all exactly the same shape, size, just with different barcodes on, what we've seen particularly is that an associate in the FC will think they're all the same product, just pick one of the barcodes, scan it, do a count, and there we go, we've got 200 of X rather than 50 of 4 different products. So if there's a way of identifying it as a mixed pallet, we would often suggest you do that. I talked about forward orders. So forward orders are always a problem and challenge because essentially of Smart Match. So Smart Match is Amazon's aggregated system. So they look at stock receipt on a net basis rather than a by order basis. So I mentioned earlier that you can only challenge shortages when the invoice is due, and this is because Smart Match is constantly running and they're just trying to do a gross picture initially of how much stock has been received against this ASIN in this time period and how many invoices we've got against it. Can we net one off against the other and does it match? So what will happen with a forward order is, because it's an open PO, Amazon potentially are scanning an ASIN saying the stock is in, and they'll allocate it to the wrong purchase order. So the issue with that is when you come to deliver that purchase order in the future, you can't, because essentially Amazon is saying they've already had the stock. So again, it's another reason why we say don't accept forward orders. Communication is always a big challenge. I'm sure you guys all face this with Amazon. So firstly, they don't have phones. If you go to Principal Place, there are no phones on desks. Everyone has only got IP communication on their laptops. They're just, those ladies that sit in reception are the only people with actual telephones they can pick up. So you're not going to be able to pick up a phone and talk to an individual who's going to help you. Likewise, calling a fulfillment center is just not possible. They, again, don't have the phones there. They won't release phone numbers. So every piece of communication must be through either CARP or Carrier Central. We do recommend using the nominated carriers, which at the moment are UPS and Pallet Line, because they do have access to fulfillment centres. So it is worth talking to them. Excuse me while I cough. Again, as I'm sure you've all seen, communication through support cases. So everything is done through, essentially it's run out of India, Retail Business Solutions, which is Amazon's admin arm, based in Chennai. What we would say, if you're not getting the right answer, or the answer you need, is raise a new case and try again. Because essentially what happens when you raise a case, you go against certain criteria, and what you'll find is you're in a decision tree and you might not have perhaps selected exactly the right criteria to answer your own question, which I know sounds counterintuitive. So as a result, you're talking to someone perhaps without the skill set, without the knowledge, and we often find just closing that case and starting another one under a different category will potentially get you to a better or different answer. Engaging with vendor managers is really interesting and critical. So realistically, if you haven't got a large scale business, we're talking £1 million plus, it's going to be difficult to engage with a vendor manager. Not impossible, but difficult. And essentially what the vendor managers are targeted on their category, not their individual businesses. So they're always looking to get the best deal out of all suppliers. So they are the key to unlock so many facets, I guess, of Amazon support, in as much as the way that we find challenging shortages or continuing issues is to make it part of that Amazon vendor negotiation with the vendor manager. So you make it a condition of the next year's joint business plan that you're not moving forward until X amount of shortages are written off and that's paid back within X amount of time. So that's the biggest thing that we see is getting that making the shortages a commercial issue, because always going through support, you're just getting the same answers all the time. Finally, if you haven't already, then you could consider looking at Amazon vendor support. So essentially this is, you pay for a brand specialist. You can either pay for a part-time or a full-time. Now, I think the part-time is actually 90K plus, depending on the size of your business. But essentially, this is someone in Amazon working on your business. Now, let's be honest, they're there to work on your business for the betterment of Amazon, not necessarily for you. So there's a delicate game to be played around engaging them that you will run promotions, you will look at certain activity, but at the same time on condition that they fix whatever issues you've got. So AVS can be really useful. And if you have got systemic issues that have been around for ever and a day, realistically paying for someone within Amazon, and I know it's a lot of cash, that's the only way to really address some of these root cause issues. So what can you do about the state of your Amazon account if your ledger is all over the place? I think the first thing I say is get onto Vendor Central, have a look yourself, go and have a play. You can't break anything. There's a lot of data on there. And even if it's outside of your remit, if you like, go and start looking at the operational reports, go and start looking at purchase orders, go and see what's going on so you've got an idea of what's happening. Next one is around always do the validation of your monthly deductions around co-ops. So we do this for our clients. So we will validate that the receipts and the volume is correct versus their outbound sales, the Amazon stock holding, etc. And if you don't agree with it, then challenge it. What we're seeing more and more of particularly is around VAT. So Amazon will have one agreement where they, rather than deducting one invoice on a monthly basis, they deduct two. On one of them, they're charging VAT, on the other, they're not. So we would always challenge that for one of our clients. Challenge any disputes through the Amazon process. So this is doing the dispute management, raising that, loading any evidence, and always going through that process. Identify the person responsible for the Amazon account in your business and try and engage with them. I think what we see quite frequently is a fragmented approach to Amazon. Our strong advice is a strong team within your business that knows all the different elements coming together is far more effective than just having what people in individual departments trying their hardest to make sense of it and make it work. Next piece is around ensuring that that person who's responsible is aware of the scale of the issues and what's driving it. So is it shortages, is it chargebacks? And again, the operations team are often the team that are left in the dark the longest, and they're quite happily doing what they think is right, but not necessarily what may be right. So I'd always suggest engaging those people. One of the sessions we often run with companies that we work with is just get everyone in a room, walk through the process, understand what's going on, try and understand what's causing the issues, and look at how to fix it. And as I said earlier, the last point there, if you've got significant shortages, turn it into a commercial issue as part of the AVN. It's the only way to do it. And at that point, challenge the vendor manager to try and engage with some resource to help you fix the problem, because it's just going to be an ongoing problem that's going to fester away. So thank you. I have got some questions already, so I'll just quickly put these up and we'll go through them and see if they answer any of yours, and then we'll open the floor if that's okay. I've heard that button chiming once. So these are pre-submitted. So how to get product status changed to avoid bubble wrap fines. So prep, and it comes, there's many forms of prep, be it bagging, bubble wrapping, taping, boxing even. Once prep is applied to a product, you need to prove why it should be removed. And the only way to do this realistically is demonstrating in pictures, so lots of photographs, how and why the product shouldn't need prep. So if, I don't know, you've improved the corners of the boxes to stop it being squashed, you need to show that. You need to submit any documentation you've got around that. But fundamentally, once prep is applied to a product, it's quite difficult to get it removed unless you can categorically prove why it should be removed. Next question was around how to implement pricing. So you can submit a new cost file on Vendor Central anytime you want, and you have to set the price effective date 60 days from the date that you load it. Typically, this will be ignored. And this is where we find most of the issues with our suppliers, that they're trying to get a cost price increase through, and Amazon just aren't engaging, just ignore it. So one thing I will state there is we have never got CPI through without going on stop. So that is the only effective threat to Amazon, is going on stop that will make them look at the cost price increase. And again, if you've got one, it's got to be a commercial issue. You've got to take it up with your vendor manager. We're seeing it across the board at the moment. Obviously, CPI is really prevalent at the moment, and Amazon just trying to hold the line, and they're having some very difficult conversations with a lot of suppliers. So I would just hold your party line, and the orders need to be just either ignored or turned down if they're ignoring CPI.
Tim,
Yeah.
There's a couple of hands that came up. I think Chris might have been from before, but if anybody's got any questions or any comments that they might want to make on these questions, should we just bring them in?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'll just go to Karen, only because I think she put her hand up regarding that last question. Is that right, Karen?
No, it's not in regard to that question. It's just in relation to shortage claims, and I had another small question as well. So I don't know if you want me to ask it now or wait until Tim goes through the rest of his slide here.
Yeah, I think we'll wait. I mean, if there's any questions anybody wants to make or any comments regarding a particular question that Tim's on, I think we'll take them, and then we'll do some questions afterwards. So if that
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so this one was regards to shortages, so I'll wait till you get to that piece.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Go on then, Tim.
So yeah, CPI difficult is the answer there. SIOC exemptions, so ships in own container. So Amazon have got different levels of product packaging that they wish people to move towards. If your product is outside of the sortable dimensions, it must be SIOC compliant. So that goes back to those dimensions I said earlier about the size of a microwave. If your product is outside of that, you have to make your product SIOC. So it's got to be able to basically just have it's a brown box and it's got to have a label stuck on it, or it's minimal prep. So if you've got a garden fork, for example, you will get fined if your product is not SIOC until you change the packaging on it. So how to get SIOC exemptions, very difficult. You've got to prove it. So we had a product that was shipped in a poly bag. So when you if tea bags, so Yorkshire tea bags, big bag of 1,200 tea bags, the plastic dimension of an empty bag slightly exceeded those dimensions, but obviously the top of it folded over. So we basically had to raise that with our AVS and managed to get a SIOC exemption on there, purely because we could demonstrate that the gross product, once it was essentially folded over and there was no air in it, met those dimensions. So that's the key, is if you can prove that your product is under those dimensions, that's the way to get a SIOC exemption. Okay, so this question was shortages deducted then repaid later, nothing matches, which leaves overpayments. Anyone else have this issue? I suspect every hand in the room's probably gone up now. So it's standard Amazon process, and it goes, I mentioned it earlier, their smart match process. So if you raise an invoice that is on the first of the month and you've got a 60-day payment terms, so you're due in 2 months' time, essentially Amazon will always be trying to match stock to that invoice up until the date that that invoice is paid. When they pay that invoice, if they still haven't found their stock, that is when they short it. So it's at that point that you can start challenging the shortage, but they'll pay the rest of the invoice that they have got the stock and just short the balance. And you'll see that, and actually you will have with SCR appended to it. Now at that point you can challenge it, and they might find a bit of that stock. So you'll get the same invoice number with SCR at the end of it. So yeah, you'll continually get this kind of hierarchy of shortage claims against the invoice. Now, in terms of nothing matches, obviously it's got the original invoice number on there, but from your ledger or accounts receivable perspective, you're always going to have that missing charge, and it's whether you can then continually kind of reference it back to it. Certainly we've seen that in the past where suppliers are continually historically trying to just top up their payment back from the Amazon account. I have got some more questions which probably
Should we just ask if Karen had anything to add to that, Karen?
Yeah, thanks a million. So Tim, what I wanted to just ask was, I have two questions. The first one is, you mentioned there on shortage claims, and the main thing to do is to investigate the issue by providing, you know, a complete POD or a correct POD for Amazon. The issue I feel is that you know, you provide a POD for Amazon. In the case that we deal with in my company is that Amazon collect from our warehouse. So they send their trucks to our warehouse and they collect the stock. So then they bring the stock back to their fulfillment center. And regardless of me sending off a valid POD, they just seem to say, no, it's what we checked in. So we're going to go by what we checked in. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we're in a bit of no man's land with our claim. Like, you know, we have a POD that has been signed by an Amazon driver, collected in full, but yet they're going by their checking system. So we don't really have a case.
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. One, we've got suppliers on WePay as well, and proof of collection basically just falls through the cracks on Vendor Central. So you've got this, like you say, a document signed by the Amazon driver, but they don't see that as a valid documentation, really. So just as a point of principle, so they don't see it as a POD. So the first thing that we've done there is, in the past, we've worked with suppliers to create a really clear document in terms of what's on there, and the driver has to sign that, and then it's countersigned. Does it help? It does a little bit, not masses. Secondly, I would look at the checking in process in terms of what's causing it. So is it any particular ASINs or any SKUs? Is it any common volumes? Is it on mixed or full pallets? Is it, yeah, try and understand what the commonality is into, and we have seen, you know, WePay is particularly poor because essentially they're cross-docking into other sites, and then that stock goes into other FCs. But I would certainly be looking at the shortages, both in terms of what the product is and what's going missing, and then I presume you've got a vendor manager if you're on WePay. So I'll be raising it to them as a significant issue. And again, the threat of going on stop is the only thing that, or actually going on stop is the only thing that really gets them off the pot.
Okay. So, and then would this, all the points that you're making here, would this be across the board Amazon globally, or are you kind of, is this just for the UK and Europe only, or
globally? Yeah, we deal with every market that Amazon
Yeah.
trade in worldwide, and it's exactly the same in every different country. It's
Okay.
their process, because they don't check off individual units against POs. They do it on this aggregating smart match process. It's flawed, and you know, there's a lot of people involved and people make mistakes.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that.
No worries. Cool.
Okay. Carry on, Tim.
So again, these questions have been submitted previously or ahead of the time. So does any company build an equivalent to a bad debt provision when trading with Amazon with a view that it's not commercially viable to contest small value claims? Me and us as a business, yes, we've seen do that. And typically, if they set a value of X a month, they will just essentially write that off as either bad debt or a cost of trading with Amazon. But that's right or wrong, I couldn't comment, but yes, we certainly have got experience of companies doing that.
Anybody got any questions on any of, or anything to add on any of these? Feel free just to put your hand up. And for those of you that don't know where that is, bottom of your screen is reactions, the little face there. If you click on that, the raise hand button goes up.
You've got loads now. Chris Thompson actually has had his hand up for quite a while, actually, from VF. So,
yeah, I think he's just put actually that he's got a question. He's going to touch on it later. I did see Chris there, and I thought we'd pass that. But I think we've got Richard Tucker.
Yes. Hi, folks. Yeah, we've been trading with Amazon quite some time. We've got, same as everyone, these shortage issues, which we're working very hard on. Still not resolved, but we're in discussions with them right now about setting up vendor flex.
Okay.
So their warehouse within ours.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, does that get rid of a lot of the shortage issues?
Yeah, certainly Amazon will tell you that's the case. It's one of the key benefits they present as moving to vendor flex. So for those that don't know, vendor flex is, as Richard just said, you essentially set aside a fair chunk of space in your warehouse, and that becomes an Amazon warehouse within yours. So when you're moving stock, you are literally just pushing it across the line, and then that stock is checked in there and then. We've only got one supplier that looked at vendor flex, and yes, it made a significant improvement on shortages. Did the problem go away completely? No. Were there other complexities, shall we say? Yes, there were, because the key one that we looked at was around staff and resource requirements. So Amazon will essentially, they'll need to book in your stock, even though it's just coming across the line. So they'll want your staff to be available to do that process when they want it. More importantly, though, then they've got a pick, pack, and dispatch operation, and again, they'll want staff hours to suit that. And that we found became quite an issue within our supplier's warehouse, because they just wanted, I don't know, 30 bodies for 2 hours, which became really difficult to resource around. So vendor flex is definitely an option if you've got space, as a way of reducing shortage claims, but it's not a panacea that will cure everything.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for your response.
Yeah, no worries. Anyone else?
Gus had his name hand up just now.
Hiya. Yeah, I'm not sure whether there'll be an answer to this, but I'm keen to ask the wider group in case anyone does. We've become loosely aware of these kind of no-win, no-fee consultants who sort of chase down your chargebacks and reclaim anything that was kind of erroneously put on us. And for us, it's becoming a slightly attractive issue, just because the amount of hours and manpower that goes into kind of looking into every single chargeback and trying to figure out what's scrupulous and what's unscrupulous. I wondered if you, Tim, or anyone else in the group had any experience of working with these, and what some of the benefits and drawbacks might be of doing so.
Short answer is no, I haven't got any experience with them. It's not something we do. Sorry, we certainly don't do that as a standalone service. We'll do it as part of our end-to-end. I guess that actually kind of is exactly the same as the question on there about employing full-time people to dispute claims. Yeah, I'm surprised that there's people that will be doing it on a no-win, no-fee basis, just because of the time involved and the complexities of it. Certainly from our experience, there's so much internal information that needs to be gathered that it's a really difficult process for someone external to then do. Certainly we don't click buttons for people. We will train them, we'll work with them to identify root cause issues. But if there are people out there that claim that they can do it, then I'd certainly be looking at them as get into the detail of what they can do and how they do it.
Awesome. I think some of our nervousness though is around things like you mentioned the smart matching, and there are certain bits that's very, very low hanging fruit that we would have got back anyway. There's a slight nervousness about giving away. I think it's 20% they charge, giving away 20% of the charge that we would have got back anyway. So yeah. No worries if you've not got experience of it, but thought it was worth asking.
I haven't, and I think that's what we often find, is that the low hanging fruit is often it's things like the transport department aren't aware that there's a ship window, so their standard delivery terms might be 3 days, but they only get the order on Wednesday, so they're always delivering it on a Monday, blissfully unaware that that's causing chargebacks. So actually a small operational change internal can fix that really quickly. And so you wouldn't necessarily be able to get those chargebacks back, but you can stop the problem occurring moving forward. And I'm not sure how an external consultant how much they could influence if they were just looking at that particular strand of your business. But I'd be interested to find out more though, if you get any experience.
Okay, Ted, did you want to carry on running through your questions?
Yeah. So what procedures are used when the shortage claims, material size, value, and the supplier's evidence? You know, it's what I keep saying. Escalation is the only way to get this happen. We had a problem where a whole vehicle of stock went missing. Essentially, we could prove it was delivered, and again, you know, it was putting the business on stock. So this was a quite significant household name, and they put it on stock until Amazon paid the cash back. That's the only language that Amazon really understand. You know, the vendor managers have so little time to engage with the suppliers that you've got to go hard and fast with them really quickly. This isn't a nice gentle discussion that you can have around a table with a Sainsbury's buyer. This is, you know, it's going to be over email probably. It needs to just be really clear and just tell them, look, we're not trading with you anymore because this isn't working. And they'll come to the table quite quickly at that point. Amazon hate going on stock. It's their one thing that they are pretty terrified. They're not terrified, but they hate being put on stock by any suppliers. Stock receipt and complexity in general. You know, realistically, you're all on this call because you've all got the same problems. Stock receipt is always an issue, and as I say, we got suppliers where we've probably never had a shortage claim, things maybe one or two, and that's around that they have got really clearly labeled products. They are following every process and procedure to the letter, and it works. And obviously, the bigger your business, the harder that becomes. But for me, yeah, it's all about that root cause. It's about understanding what something's wrong somewhere, whether that's in the catalogue, with the barcode, the labelling, the transport. And if someone in your business can get their head around that, that will significantly, and they'll need Amazon support to do that. But if they can do that, then you'd be stopping that problem occurring in the future. Oh, you all right if I move on?
Yep.
So this question came through. I'm not quite sure what it was specifically asking. We're down to the third, I presume that's party invoices that were deducted from the vendor portal. So I guess that goes back to my point earlier about getting onto Vendor Central and having a proper look around. So, and if you're looking for co-ops and promotional information, it's all under the payments and co-op tab. If it's charges, then it's under reports and operational chart reports. If you've got AP audits, etc., then they are emailed through to they're emailed through to the nominated accounts receivable contact on Vendor Central. So it's always worth making sure that your contacts are up to date on Vendor Central. If no one's got it, then you can simply open a case and request all that documentation. So they'll send both PDF invoice and spreadsheet, which will go into detail around why they've done that, why they've deducted that AP audit. So there's a whole question there around ASNs, that the stock basically, that the ASNs are saying more than Amazon expectation. My first order here is that this is either forward orders or it's a catalogue issue. So you might be sending it, and we're saying more, you're sending in a case of 6, for example, or Amazon has seen that as a case of 12, for example. So you think you're sending in one quantity of units, Amazon has seen a different quantity of units. That is what I suspect it might be. There's a catalogue issue. You'd have to get into that exact product, or if it's across the range, to understand exactly how everything's set up without seeing the real detail. I can't go into a bit more detail around there. I mean, having overages against the ASN isn't that common. So I do suspect there's something around setup or forward orders there that's causing that. And then back to shortage claims, you know, everything we've said, root cause, AVS can help make it commercial conversation to address and recover.
We've got a couple of hands up there, Tim. We've got Holly. Hi, Holly from Callow Foods.
Hi. So the question about the non-conformances and the ASNs was me.
Okay.
It isn't forward orders, but we do receive multiple orders from Amazon weekly, quite a lot of them.
Mhm.
And what we find is our stock, if we can't get a booking slot, and sometimes we really struggle for maybe 2 or 3 weeks even against their required shipping window. And we find that our stock is then booked in against things that we haven't yet delivered.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, that's Smart Match. It's a pain in the backside.
Mm.
Who are you? Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Do you do the deliveries yourselves, or are you using a third-party haulier?
Yeah, so it's a combination of doing them ourselves, and we also use the Amazon service for them to come and collect our goods too.
Okay, so sorry, so is that's not WePay, that's Amazon Freight.
Amazon Freight, yes, yeah.
So firstly, 2 things. So our recommendation is always to use one of the nominated carriers because they get preferential treatment and they will often deliver out of hours. Certainly in our experience, Pallet Line are the most effective at this. So there's only Pallet Line and UPS which are nominated carriers. So Pallet Line can always get a booking slot is the first thing, because they've got a number of lanes reserved against them every day and every night in every FC. So that reduces that significantly. The difference with Amazon Freight is that essentially once they collect it from you, that's considered as Amazon stock then. So they might not book it in for 2 weeks because they're busy or whatever, but essentially you don't get any fine because they collected it within your PO window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my advice from what you just said is, if you're getting issues with not being able to get deliveries, therefore PO on time compliance, then I would look at using either Pallet Line or UPS. My preference would be Pallet Line. I've got no affiliation with it, I just think it works better. When it comes to Amazon Freight, if you're getting charges for out of PO ship window there, then you should be challenging those, because that's part of the agreement with Amazon Freight that essentially those chargebacks should be waived.
Yeah, the challenge we have with Amazon Freight is I think also the evidence, because we go to them and say this is what we need you to come and collect, and then they just tell us when they're going to collect it. We don't have the evidence to say we tried to get an earlier slot. So when we're trying to dispute those charges, Amazon are coming back and saying you haven't provided the evidence, but we don't seem to have the evidence in the first place because it doesn't seem to be part of the process.
So when you're booking the collection via Amazon Freight using the Amazon Freight website, you put in you put a requested collection date, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, my advice is to start taking screenshots of that.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's Amazon's advice too. It's just a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I can fully appreciate that. I mean, you should have an Amazon Freight contact who you set the contract with. You should be able to contact them and explain the situation and say, this is the issue with getting Amazon Freight, therefore, what we can do about it.
Okay, that's good advice. And in terms of Pallet Line, how would you recommend going about getting hold of the right person? Is that again through your AVS?
No, so the way that Pallet Line work is every postcode in the country has is associated to a territory, which is it's a shareholder franchise essentially. So a haulier will cover a particular area. They are a member of Pallet Line. So essentially you would have a local company. If you go onto the Pallet Line website, you can just put your postcode in and it will tell you who your local company is. So essentially you would have a contract with them, and what they would do for you is they would collect the stock from you, they would deliver it into their network, which spits it out at the other end, which is closest to an Amazon FC. And that other haulier will have fixed slots running in daily into Amazon, and they'll take your stock and everyone else is in with them. they have also got a central bookings team that has contact with all the FCs, so they manage that process there. Now, the only caveat I'll give around pallet line is some of the bigger hauliers, and you need to look at this when you talk to them and arrange your contracts. And the bigger ones, they will do some of their own deliveries themselves rather than using the pallet line network. So Joe Blogg's Transport, rather than going through pallet line, if they've got an FC that's quite close to them, they might do it themselves, because obviously it's cheaper for them if they're just going quite short distance. Why pay a network fee? Now, the issue with that is when Joe Blogg's Transport does it, he's not part of pallet line, so he doesn't get preferential treatment. So potentially he's not getting the delivery within the ship window. So it's really important as part of the contract that you understand whether they will be doing the deliveries themselves or whether they'll be doing it exclusively through pallet line. And just to understand that, and if they are doing it themselves, will they accept any fines that come through if they're not delivering the ship window, etc.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's really helpful.
No worries.
Okay, Richard, you got your hand up?
Yeah. So you're saying don't accept forward orders. I got a hell of a lot. How far forward do you say not to accept?
We tell everyone that we work with, don't accept anything that's not for delivery this week. And the
deepest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on, we perhaps need to look at your order profile on that. And let's be honest, the reason that Amazon are placing forward orders is to smooth their inbound and resource profile over a period of time. Now, the issue with that is, so say today, where are we, the 20-something of March, if they're placing an order for May, then they are only going to place an order for 50, 60, maybe 70% of the stock that they think they'll need in that week.
Right.
So they're working out their resource and their stock intake, which is great for them. But what they'll do in that week in May, they will probably place a secondary top-up order to get them to the 100% of stock that they actually need. So from your perspective, you're potentially running two pick cycles. You're potentially having to, consolidate two POs onto one ASN, or depending on the size of your business, you might be running different vehicles. So essentially, you're getting two orders to be delivered to the same FC in the same week, because essentially, you've helped Amazon smooth their intake in 6 weeks' time. But actually, from your perspective, do you see this? Do you still get an order for that FC in that week?
I'm not sure. I'm in the finance department, so I'm not seeing the orders, for specific DCs.
Yeah, I would certainly look at that, because that's certainly our experience that you're massively helping Amazon out by smoothing their resource curve, but actually you're making your operation less efficient, because you still get two orders for the same FC in the same week in the end. Okay,
and you were saying smart match as well.
Yeah.
So those once you accept those orders, they're open. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think was it Holly just said exactly that. Once a PO is open, stock can be booked against. Once a PO is confirmed, stock can be booked against it. So the problem that some suppliers will see is you've got an order that's 6 weeks out, you've accepted it, that's fine, but Amazon in the meantime incorrectly receives stock and smart match it against that open PO. So when you come to actually pick and book that, Amazon saying, well, we've already have that stock.
Yeah, should be shorted.
Yeah, and they short it. Yeah, so and it just creates more of a quagmire of a mess. And
from your experience, you wouldn't lose out on sales, because you get in the week you should get the 100% order anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And that 100% might be only 90% because the volume's down that week. It might be 110% because sales are up. But either
what
way,
they need.
Yeah, you're still splitting it. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks for that. Really good.
Right, okay.
I've moved on to that next slide just because, the floor's open, I guess.
Yeah, so I think too, maybe we'll just have a break, comfort break. I think we've had everybody on the call for a long time, and maybe comfort breaks required. So if we come back at 11 o'clock, if that's okay with everybody, and we'll carry on from there, if that's all right. Is that all right with you, Tim?
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's bored of my voice by now.
Is that it? Tim? Is that the last of your slides?
Yeah, that's me done. So I'm just here.
I should take them off there then. Okay, brilliant.
Okay, so if everybody, if you bottom left of your screen, you've got a mute button and a stop video, you can press that for a bit of privacy, and we'll see you back at 11 o'clock. See you all in a bit.
Thanks. Oh, pallet line for the carriers.
Yeah, I didn't expect that.
Well, Hermes are our best ones on the ones we use, but
Oh, and I thought, well, for Amazon.
no, we've used pallet line before, but that's only to like part pallet line and pallet line and all those. So that but what happens if you haven't got the right? Because it goes in the hub and goes in the different directions. But if you haven't got the right supplier, but, you know, because the companies associated with that is so we don't use our Richards on that. Interhall, sorry, yeah, Interhall. That's right.
Yeah, look at CODC, look at CODC, low, 200 cases, this one's 400,000 forward.
Yeah.
This has way over that.
We are. That's interesting.
It's a relevant sheet. Must be something else, it could be stored orders.
So you happy so far, Laurie?
Yes, very much so. That was really good. If Tim's listening, just round of applause for Tim. I think that was really good.
I just walked back in. Thank you.
You didn't hear what we were saying about you before that, so it's all right.
Always said before, Brent, don't worry. You won't be the first.
It's a virtual round of applause. So yeah, no, that's very good actually. Yeah. So hopefully we can. We've got a few prompts now to just bring up onto the screen. Hopefully you can see that. Brent, can you see that?
Yeah.
And see whether you can. Hopefully that will prompt some experiences and questions and things from everybody. So I think we still had a couple of hands up anyway. So
Yeah, because I think we've got. I'll drop Richards, but I think we never got around to asking what Chris's question.
yes, yeah, we'll go back to. Yeah, we'll start with Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah. Just give it a couple of minutes because we've come back a little bit early, but yeah, I think
no, you said 11 o'clock. We'll give it 2 more minutes. So.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Very, very precise. Or 1 more minute.
So Tim, I think you were okay to stay on the call for a bit, weren't you? In case.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I mean, we'll plan to use some of the attendees for answering questions and getting some experience back as well. But it's good that you're there on hand as well.
Tim, how do you feel about your slides? Is that something we can share?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. I sent the PDF over to you, so just to
yeah, it'd be a PDF version.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Was there something on those slides that you didn't want on? Did you take something off that one of those slides, Tim?
It's something, but I'll take those for it.
Yeah, I can remember. Was there something on there that was one of your clients? So
yeah, I mean, it's anonymized data. There's no names or anything on there. So
okay.
Okay. Well, we're at 11 o'clock, so hopefully your people are back. It's a bit of a job to tell, really, isn't it? So, but looking at the numbers, I think we've still got quite a few people with us. So hopefully you've all managed to have a comfort break and grab that cup of tea or cup of coffee. So what we'd like to do now is to really open it up to the floor. I think we did, was it Chris had a question? Had his hand up for a long time. So
yeah, it's going back to the reason I didn't sort of mention anything earlier was just purely on the basis that I was going right the way back to the start where you were going over the overall process, and I noted something that you were saying that actually we need to confirm the goods. Many people think we need to confirm the goods to Amazon within 24 hours, but actually it's the same day.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch upon that a little bit more with you to understand the impacts, because we have reorders come through every single day, even over the weekends. And what sprung to mind was that most of our orders are processed within the same working day. But we also have, for example, orders that come through at 3 p.m. on a Friday when our working hours, let's say we finish at 4 or 5 p.m. They're not going to be processed until the Monday. So they're not going to be confirmed to Amazon until the Monday. So I was trying to understand how that would work, because we still see that the POs are open in Vendor Central for us to confirm. But is that just a guideline, or is that a firm, or is there going to be impact for not confirming them within the working day?
Oh, so unless you've got some sort of exemption from the vendor manager, you'll be getting fined for those, particularly on the Friday through to the Monday. So the way that a PO works, it exists in different states essentially. So when it's first placed, it's in an unconfirmed state. It will stay in that unconfirmed state until either you confirm it or cancel it, or 7 days pass and then it will just automatically cancel itself. So the PO will always stay open for 7 days. So those that you're getting on a Friday afternoon will absolutely be there on a Monday morning. That's fine. But as I say, you will be getting, I'll be surprised if you're not getting fines for confirming them on the Monday. So I guess my first question is this a fresh business, or is it a
No, we're an established business, VF Corporation. So the North Face, Eastpak, Kipling, Vans, Timberland. So big brands are obviously going through Amazon on a daily basis in big volumes.
Sorry, apologies. When I say fresh, I was into Amazon Fresh.
Oh, sorry.
My fault. Sorry.
No, it's okay. No.
So what I would potentially suggest you could try, recognizing Friday's a challenge or whatever. Within Vendor Central, you can place PO outage windows.
Okay, I'm aware of those. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So particularly, most people do the bank holidays, stock take, all that kind of stuff. We've worked with one of our suppliers where we've excluded Friday specifically, so that the situation you just described doesn't happen, so that they don't get orders on the Friday. And it took probably 4, maybe 6 weeks for order volumes to balance, and basically Amazon recognised and adjusted their algorithm to show that the orders just weren't going to get accepted on a Friday. So it might be worth looking at something like that to prevent operational issues.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I know that we've got also people within our business on the call. I didn't know whether anybody from the CRT team in my business wanted to comment as well, just to see if we actually are seeing disputes related to that. I'm interested to know. I'm not always in touch with that type of thing, but anybody wanted to comment? If not, I'll take it offline with them. And yeah.
Sure. Bethany, I think were you going to comment on that one?
Yeah, just from a credit perspective, we do receive a lot of of those deductions and fines that I saw in the chat the code that was on the end of the deduction, the VCB and whatever. So it's interesting to see where that is coming from and why. I think it'll be good that if we can. I have a question. Could the the block. So if we refuse the orders on the Friday, could we also do that for a Saturday and Sunday? Obviously, we don't work on a weekend. If we're receiving orders in on those days, could we also say that they won't be accepted rather than be charged?
Yes, there's two. Excuse me. There's two things you can do. You can always decline an order, so you can just say it's out of stock, and there's no penalty for that at all. So as long as you say that on the day that the PO is placed, you shouldn't be getting an issue. If you've got orders that are coming in outside of working hours, then you know you're not going to be able to do anything with them. You can literally just ignore them, just leave. Because when I say about confirming orders, that's either confirming that you're going to send it or confirming you're not going to send it. So if you get an order on a Saturday and you literally just have a rule which says any orders placed over the weekend, just ignore them. The following weekend, they'll just automatically cancel. There'll be no, they just disappear off the system. And actually, we've not run this as an experiment, but something we should do is, I think Amazon's ordering algorithm will adjust to that over time if you keep doing that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So, Laurie, I'll just go through some of the hands up if you're okay with that. Renee, you've got a question. You're on mute.
There's going to be one. It was going to be me.
Yeah.
It's around the shortage claim. So the Amazon accounts, I believe, he has reconciled quite well. It's just the shortage claims I have a problem with, because we do defend them through Vendor Central. We provide the pod, packing list, etc. We find that the shortage claim will get reversed, but then deducted a lesser amount. So they'll pay. They say they've deducted 10 units, they'll pay back 2 and then deduct 8. Yeah. So we'll go and defend it again. They'll find another 2 units. So they'll pay me back for 2 units, then deduct 6. And they'll keep repetitively doing it, although we're uploading the same data all the time. It's very time consuming. After a period of time, they then close that case off through Vendor Central. And then we're left with the shortage claim, which is very frustrating because we know we've delivered those goods in, and it's repetitive all the time. And I just wondered, is there anything else that we could do in relation to that?
Yeah,
we have that issue as well at booths where they do a lot.
Yeah, and that's where it's about escalation into a commercial issue with the vendor manager. That realistically, no, like you just said, you've exhausted the process that's available through Vendor Central, so there's only so much you can do. And then you've got to go to the vendor. We didn't exactly. We took over an account, and we the debt on Vendor Central. I don't know. I can't remember the numbers exactly. I say it's 50k. But then when we talked to the people in your situation, it was in excess of 150k, and we could really easily prove this to the vendor manager. And basically, we just put them on stop until they're repaid. Now they didn't what they don't do is repay at line level. They essentially, it's kind of a one-off payment with a letter of authority, just saying, I can't remember the exact wording of it now, but this is full and final settlement of any outstanding claim. Here's a chunk of cash. So what we then did is retrospectively give the business at line level the detail of that, so that on the ledger you could then match that against the individual payments. But that is the only way to do it, escalating it to the vendor manager, threatening to put the business on stop.
Okay, did that business in your experience put them on stop? Because obviously that's stopping revenue as well at the same time. How long were they on stop for?
Probably about, it was under 2 weeks. Okay. So it was maybe 7 days, something like that, before they accepted another PO. And it was a critical time for Amazon with that business because it was key trading, but they just their finance director got to the point of, what, we're just writing off cash left, right, and centre. Let's, yes, we're losing revenue, but at the cost of, the back end, it's just leaking cash.
So then going forward, is that something that business does every year now? They come to an agreement every year of these shortage claims that they get to agree a value before contract renegotiation? Is that something that they now do as part of process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're literally in that process right now with them. We were, so it was when we started working, it was the first piece of work that I did for them. So at the same time as ascertaining the scale of the issue and supporting my colleagues in making it a commercial discussion, we also did a lot of root cause stuff. So we probably eliminated, I don't know, off the top of my head, 70% of the issues that were causing that problem. So moving forward, yes, it is part of the AVN that they have that discussion and that there is a payback, but that payback now is significantly less than when we first started working with them, because we've managed to address some of the issues.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right, okay. Who have we got next? We'll go to Nicola at CMS.
So just a quick question, is anyone using the AVS facility? And if they are, do they find it successful? Because it is quite an expensive route to go.
That's a question for the floor. And
yeah.
Can I just chip in? It depends on your AVS is the short answer. So we've had experience of brilliant ones, we've had the experience of shocking ones. And I think, we've had AVSs replaced before because we've been so disappointed with the service that, again, because as you say, it's an expensive service, you're paying for it, you need to make sure it's working for you. So I believe it's worth using AVS. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Depending on the scale of your business, depending on what you're looking to get out of it and whatever problems you're trying to resolve, I think the AVS is a good, thanks Holly. I think AVS is a really good service, but if you've been sold it as a way to improve an already good business, I'd look closely at it. Which isn't, I know that's a either or answer, apologies, but yeah, that's my view. Go on, Holly, you give us your view on it.
So yeah, in the past, we've had a really fantastic AVS, and they have really helped across the whole spectrum, from the commercial, the supply chain, and into our finance. And just touching on the shortage claims, we did recover about £100,000 last year, tied into our annual negotiation. At the moment, our AVS is not great. And I think what we find is they change them quite regularly, and that can be one of the challenges. And they're often people without experience of the Amazon business, so they're new in, and it depends how quickly they get up to speed and how enthusiastic they are, I think, in our experience.
Echoing that, Holly's absolutely right. The AVS is a really junior position. They bring graduates straight into it. They give them a huge amount of responsibility and very little training. My advice would be, if you're considering getting an AVS, you haven't already got one, make it part of your AVN that they are an experienced AVS with at least a year's experience. Because that doesn't, no guarantee you're going to get a great one, but it means you might not get someone who's literally fresh in the door.
Okay, and I have another question, and this is around the co-op agreements. Mm-hmm. We have been finding over the last 12 to 18 months that Amazon aren't deducting as we would expect. So we would have quite a number of open agreements with them. Some come in every month, they're fine, but then others, we just don't get the debit notes or the deductions at all. And then at the end of the period, you'll get everything at once, or you're waiting for 2 to 3 years and you get it on an audited claim. Do we know why this happens at Amazon? Is there something we can do to drive them to change so that they, I suppose, do deduct when they should, or as we expect? Because as you've alluded to earlier, when you get an audit claim, you spend quite considerable time having to review it, go through it. And we have had experience where we have successfully disputed audits, but these valid ones, it just seems to take up a huge amount of additional work that we don't feel it should, because if they're following the correct process on their side, we shouldn't be getting these audits.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it just audits are we talking about, or are we talking co-op deduction, normal co-op deduction?
It's normal co-op deductions, but we just don't get the deductions on a monthly basis, whereas we do with some, but not across the board. So I think since certainly in Q1 to date, I think I've had about 6 audit claims around co-op agreements from the back end of 2020 into 2021.
Okay. My own experience of this, I guess, is that we found co-op agreements that were set up incorrectly by vendor managers, so they weren't set up to deduct on a monthly basis. So that it's how the vendor manager set it up, and the one I'm thinking of, they set it up to be quarterly. So it still came through as a co-op deduction, but on a quarterly basis rather than a monthly basis. So it wasn't coming through as a follow-up AP audit, but it was just out of sync essentially. So I guess my advice would talk to your vendor manager.
Okay, yep, thank you.
No worries. There was someone just put a question in chat around, yeah, Gus, I think it is. A couple of questions around AVS and Kaizen. I don't know, has anyone experienced the Kaizen, an Amazon Kaizen?
Yes, we've had some experience, but not from my point of view, it's more from an operational point of view.
Okay, so prior to this business, I used to run the home delivery operation for Argos and Homebase, and we employed consultants, and we did, full-on Kaizen. A whole Kaizen took a week, and it was, hugely involved from a staff, data, physically doing stuff in a warehouse perspective. So when I first got involved in Amazon Kaizen with one of our suppliers, I was really excited to see how Amazon did it. And basically, they sat us down in a room and told us what we were doing wrong and what programs we should invest in to rectify those problems. And that was like an hour's meeting. And then I was surprised. So I went, so when are we having the Kaizen? And they just said, well, we've had it. So essentially, that's all the Kaizen that we've experienced, is that Amazon tell you what's wrong, how to spend, and what you need to do to invest in their programs to change it. I was quite shocked at the disjointed way and the way it was just presented to us. So I feel free, obviously, to enroll in it, but certainly from what I've seen, it's not a Kaizen as the Kaizen process is often run.
Just going to ask what's a Kaizen, but then I've just looked it up on Google. It's a Japanese term meaning change for the better.
Yes, yeah, so it's a process improvement tool that was developed by the Toyota Corporation probably back in the early 50s. And so there's lots of, that's cool, Matilda's saying it was good, with lots of different stages in how you look at a process, you break it down, you understand what's going wrong or how it could be improved, and then you make those changes in quite a quick time frame usually, and measure results as quickly as possible. And so, like I say, my experience was that it wasn't a cooperative process, but we just heard, sorry, from someone from Clark's. I've got chat open. Matilda, do you want to just jump on the call, Matilda, and just give us your experience?
Sure. I think because ours was over COVID and it was remote, I think it was probably better than what you had, because we were expecting to have just a single visit to the Amazon warehouse and probably do what you did. But as it was remote, we had monthly calls with them for a year.
Okay.
And that was really helpful to identify, actually not a year, 6 months. That was really helpful for us to identify things that we were actually doing wrong. But also we were able to push back on them on all the things that they weren't complying with. And they actually gave us a contact who would be our intermediary with the finance team, which means that when we have cases on Vendor Central that are not getting resolved, even though we have all the evidence, we can send an email to this lady, Natalie, and she will actually talk to their finance team and get it all resolved for us. So it will take her still weeks and weeks to actually get something resolved, and we have to chase her. But it's a lot more efficient than using Vendor Central and hoping that somebody actually looks at it instead of being the default rejection. Because one thing that they actually shouldn't have told us in that Kaizen is that the first time you open a case, it is automatically rejected by the system, and it's only looked at by a person on the second or the third time that you open that case. So yeah, that's very inefficient. So if you know you've got a case that they're rejecting the first time, but you don't want to go through the process of doing it again, if you've got a direct contact, that's really helpful. So I don't know if the Kaizens are still like that, but if you manage to get a deal like this, that's quite good.
Yeah, and certainly my experience is quite maybe 2 years before COVID, so maybe the program's changed quite significantly. So yeah, I mean, I think it's always worth exploring that, and I think, as I just said, having a direct contact with Amazon is priceless. So if you can get that, then it's well worth doing.
Okay, shall we just see who else has got their hand up? We've got Teresa. You've got a question, Teresa. We can't hear you. I don't know. It doesn't look like you've got mute, but try again. No, there's nothing coming through. Maybe put a question in the chat, Teresa. Maybe there's something wrong with the microphone. Holly, have you got another question, or is it still up from before?
I've got two, if that's okay.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
My first question is regarding EDI. So at the moment we do EDI orders and EDI invoices. We've recently been looking at the at order confirmation or acknowledgement. So the ORDR SP message, and we're looking at it not just for Amazon, but also because I work across Europe, our other e-com customers. And I just I really like to understand if you see any benefit in having that message.
So presumably at the moment though, you're keying order confirmation onto Vendor Central, are you?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so straight away, you can take that process out of the loop. So there's obviously a time and resource saving there, but I suspect there's also an accuracy piece that if you've got lots of orders, put people in any process, and we all make mistakes, don't we? So yes is the short answer to both questions. I'm going to go back to that caveat that I've mentioned several times in the presentation, though, is making sure that you're validating correctly both the price, the product, and the quantity. Your internal system has to be accurate to what you are confirming back, else that's just going to cause problems further down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very different EDI process for Amazon to the rest of our customers. My other question is around labeling of the product. So we use GTIN Receive, and we're sharing our data through Product DNA. We don't apply any case labels as a result of doing that. But I do have a question around, would they be of benefit? So we looked previously at labeling the case because I think they need the purchase order number that it relates to and the supplier, if I remember rightly. And do you see a benefit in doing that? Does it help with the shortage claims?
I think if you're going to go down that route of labeling every case, essentially you're moving away from GTIN Receive to what they call license plate receive. Personally, I mean, whenever I work with one of our supplier or a new supplier, we always kind of push them towards GTIN Receive just because it's far more efficient internally for yourselves.
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't do the step back to LPR, but I would be looking at if there are still problems on receipt, is it around the ASN label itself? Again, we would suggest if you can try and put the ASN label on at least two faces of the pallet and on the top, just so it's really visible what it is. it'd be that kind of thing rather than individual case labeling, just because you'd be destroying any efficiency you've gained through using GTMC.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to Teresa. She's put the note in the chat there. I don't know whether this is a question for Tim or for anybody. So, hi, from a legal perspective, where do you stand when you have provided all the required evidence to dispute the shortage, but Amazon still refused to pay? So, well, I'll start with you, Tim. Have you come across that where you just can't get them to pay no matter what you've done?
I mean, yes is always the answer. And we've had companies write off debt. In terms of the exact question, where do you stand legally? I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I guess certainly a lot of the businesses we deal with, because we focus on consumables, so have now fallen under GSCOP. And we're still waiting to see what the first GSCOP rulings look like as they come out of as people raise pricing and shortage issues within Amazon. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens over the next 6 weeks, 3 months, to see how Amazon respond. Because certainly we a lot of our suppliers know that Amazon are not compliant to GSCOP rules already. So it's going to be interesting to see how Amazon interpret those and perform to them, I guess.
Hi.
Yeah, who was that?
It's Teresa.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Just to add on to the question I posted, I've been looking at the Amazon account for over 10 years. And we have formed a new department which mainly looks at the Amazon shortages. So over the years, we have made massive losses on Amazon shortages. So we had a Kaizen several years ago, and Amazon actually came in and sat with us and recommended that we needed to implement SSCC labeling, improve our EDI, use one of their preferred couriers, all of which we did. And we are still having the same level of shortages that we had several years ago. So at this point, we actually spoken to somebody at Amazon and asked them, what do you want to see? So at this point, we provide a copy of the POD and invoice, which links together via a VIPC reference, which also appears on a pick list, a pack list. It includes the SSCC label and references, a POD and a CARP. And we've had some success over the last month or so where a lot of historical items have been getting repaid back. But obviously moving forward, we don't want to be in the same position that we are now, where we are constantly chasing. Some of these invoices date back 2 years.
Yeah. So, go on.
So over the, as I said, I've worked on the account for 10 years now. We've had 3 settlement agreements, and we want to know how to avoid just Amazon coming to you at the end and saying, tell you what, we'll just go 50-50, or we'll just give you the percentage of it, when we have categorically provided everything that proves that we have delivered the stock.
Yeah. The short answer is, what can you do to definitely guarantee it? Well, nothing. The engagement with the vendor manager definitely does help, but as you just said, they come back with a 50-50 or a percentage offer. We actually had a supplier that instructed solicitors and just went after them, really, and it was actually tiny value compared to a lot of people that we deal with, and Amazon did repay it in full. I guess, back to the question around legally, where do we stand? I don't know. And if you're continually facing those shortages, it's got to go back to the point where you're saying, look, it's just becoming unprofitable to supply you. We can't do this.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any experience of what documentation is actually accepted?
So on Vendor Central, you can download what constitutes an acceptable POD.
Yeah, they reject that. Apparently Amazon don't accept PODs.
Okay.
Anybody else? I don't know who's got their hands up for a question, or whether who's got their hands up for to answer this particular question. But anybody got an experience of when you just can't go any further with Amazon from a legal point of view? If you just want to speak up.
They do tend to put people down the settlement route, is our experience. That seems to be their preferred course of action.
Yeah, that's what we found. We're in the middle of doing a settlement agreement with them at the moment, but it's been ongoing for months. And yeah, it's just dragging and dragging and dragging.
Yeah, same here. I think we're 6 months into our settlement agreement with them.
Yeah.
For us, it took about 9 months.
Yeah, and then you've got to start it all over again for the next lot.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like you're going to bang your heads on the wall for that one.
So I just popped a question in there. The customer there, or the supplier that did go legal with them, are they still trading with Amazon?
Yeah, they had a break before our time, but I think it was probably about 6 months. But yeah, now they're back up and trading. Although interestingly, they're on stop right now because they're trying to get CPI through.
Okay.
Right. Can I just bring Chris back in? I think Chris put on the chat to me, he's got something to add on Holly's points. Chris?
Yeah, so it's covering 2 points. We were talking about the order response. Now, as a business, I know Tim said earlier on in the process that to avoid accepting pre-books, like future orders for maybe 6 weeks in advance plus maybe, as an example. So I wanted to cover two things. In addition to what Tim mentioned, is that we do accept pre-books for some of the brands that we work with, but not all. So our order response to those differs. So if we deal with an immediate order that came in this morning, as an example, and I confirm that today, I confirm it through EDI, which is also interlinking to what Holly was saying about EDI, is we confirm to them, okay, these are the exact units that we have put into our warehouse for processing. So that's for the immediate delivery. However, for future pre-books, which Tim was advising not to accept them, that's an ongoing discussion on my side, but we look at them in a different way, and we actually tell Amazon what is confirmed for future, because we work with seasons because of the nature of our product. A lot of it's apparel and footwear, as an example, and we would tell the business, Amazon what is confirmed. So we would say, okay, they want 1,000 units of something, and they can have those 1,000 units confirmed for, let's say, June, and we would tell them that way rather than when we put it into process into our warehouse. So EDI, order response, definitely works for us, Holly, going back to your point. But also, if anybody's got anything else to add to Tim's point on pre-books, that'd be greatly appreciated, because it's a big battle that I'm having my side with the brands that I look after within VF.
Can I just jump in there? I guess we also deal with a client that's very seasonal, and their traditional model with the high street is that they have essentially a buy agreed something ahead of Christmas, by the summertime, and Amazon are actually falling in line with that process as well. So they will, as part of the JVP, as part of the AVN, they will agree a base level of orders that they're going to place by line for Christmas, and we'll see those orders placed around usually late August, early September, and then delivery spread through September, October, November. So those types of forward orders where they're committing to, as part of the overall business plan, we do, that's very different to Amazon just trying to smooth their resource intake when we're talking about millions of pounds worth of buy. So I think just be really clear, there's kind of two different types of forward orders there. So you might be in the same boat there, Chris. They're essentially they are committing to buy ahead in bulk, not necessarily just bulk buy, but they're committing to buy their Christmas range up front, essentially.
Yeah, you're dead right there, Tim. We have a committed buy maybe 4 months in advance.
Yeah.
So if we break our seasons down, so each brand that we have within our organization, they will do a future buy. So they will say, okay, today they want to buy product for July, and we would call them a forward buy. And then on top of that, you would also have what we call like a flow pre-book, which is the algorithm in Amazon that says, okay, I want 2 units of something for 3-4 weeks in advance. So there's that as well. But yeah. Okay. But thanks. That's it from me.
Okay, we'll just go through some of the hands up. We've got Matt. We've got a question, Matt.
Yeah, back on the shortages, we found the dispute management section of Vendor Central. Whatever we put in there, it gets rejected within 3 to 5 days. We've tried added PODs and lots of other information, photos. Whatever we put, it gets rejected. We've had some joy lately though. We went through on Vendor Central. If you go to support, then contact us. For us, we'd go to home, payments, then shortages.
Mm-hmm.
I added a spreadsheet of 28 claims I've been going back and forwards for the last 4 months. They agreed after 10 days that they're going to pay 26 of these. So we went through all of the ways that Vendor Central was telling us to do it, and it wasn't working. But this generic way where you could just upload a spreadsheet and say, this is all your DSP reference numbers. And the 26 they paid back was right. The 2 they didn't pay back was, we've got a thing at the moment where some of the fulfillment centers aren't accepting our deliveries. They come back in full. About 10% of the invoice is paid by Amazon, but all of the stock is returned to us. So we're not sure why they're paying a small amount on it, and I can't allocate it anywhere else. So it's making the ledgers look a bit messy, but it seems like an overpayment.
Yeah.
But after the dispute management session doesn't work, this going through the support and contact us section, that seems to start working for us. It worked this week anyway.
That's really interesting. I have seen it work once before. So yeah, definitely try that as a.
It's the first time it's worked for us. This has been ongoing for the last 6 months or so. We're trying to look at all the shortages we had, because we're getting quite significant amounts now. So I think now we've found a route that has worked once. I'm going to put a load in later this week to see what more I can get of them.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So just on the piece where they're effectively paying for stock you feel you haven't delivered, we've experienced something similar where we know we've had a failed delivery and yet stock gets booked in against the PO. Is this to do with this smart booking in system? Because often what we find is that we have a shortage against one PO, but the exact same amount of units were booked in around the same time period against a PO that we know landed back in our warehouse. So we can kind of counteract one against the other almost. But from my point of view, having been dealing with Amazon for the last 5 or 6 years, I suppose it brings into question the whole smart booking in system they claim to be operating.
I mean, obviously, I don't work for Amazon, but I completely agree with you. What I genuinely don't understand, this is just my personal opinion, is when they scan a product in, the first thing they scan is the ASN. The ASN is linked to the PO, and then they're scanning in at product level. So why that isn't doing it at PO level, I've got no idea. I mean, I can vaguely see the advantages because it's such a massive operation of doing it at a macro level, but it doesn't make sense to me. It's like you say, they changed about, the Smart Match was introduced, was it about 5-6 years ago, wasn't it? So I can't comment, but I'm sure there's some internal logic that makes sense to them.
Because my understanding up to that was that Amazon always booked in against the oldest open PO they have for you for that product.
Yeah.
But we're using the license plate system, so I just find it very difficult to comprehend why stock isn't getting booked in against the correct PO.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, last time I was at Amazon event down at LCYT before, you know, the world went mad 2 years ago, that was exactly the question that everyone had is, you know, if I'm using license plate, I can tie every single unit back to the unit, to the carton, to the carton, to the PO, to the PO, to the PO, to the ASN. How is this not going to receive? And they just couldn't answer. And we have some quite senior people in the room there. They promised to take it away. But I think shortage is just the biggest issue that goes on with Amazon. And it's just because of the scale of their business. I think that's the fundamental issue. They're taking so much stock on such a regular basis. You know, they're literally, each FC is taking millions of units on a daily basis. But why they can't get it accurate, I don't know.
Okay, we'll move on. We've got Sarah from BF. How you doing, Sarah?
Hello, thank you, Martin. I was just wondering if anybody experienced, I know I briefly touched upon it in the chat, experiences any issues with quite a high volume of invoices being rejected due to invalid line item total. I know that Teresa said that she had, but what we've found is it's quite a manual process in terms of resolution. It can be quite timely, and I was just curious to see like how other people resolve it. I mean, we found as well, especially with the different marketplaces that we use, we tend to get different responses. So I think that's just a given sometimes with Amazon, that you just have to re-raise another case and hope that you get the answer that you'd like. But yeah, I was just curious to see how everyone else deals with the issue, if you do have it, or if there's ways of getting it resolved a little bit sooner.
It's just, I'm curious. So is it been rejected at the point you're creating the invoice, or is it once the invoice is created, you then getting a rejection later?
Yeah, once the invoice is created and it's in the portal, and then we're checking, you know, like the status of it, for example, we're seeing that it's rejected, and then we can see that it's rejected due to this invalid line item total. So then we have to kind of like pull an Excel and then collate it with the ASINs and POs and things. So you know, you can imagine if it's affecting a high volume of invoices across a number of marketplaces, it can be quite time consuming.
And when you do that analysis, what's that showing? Is it that you're putting, are you invoicing at a different value than Amazon are expecting? So essentially create your price claim essentially.
Yeah, it's not matching on their side. So sometimes it can be due to the cost what they have on their side. It can vary really, but again, it's just about going through each invoice individually and seeing what the problem is on their side.
My advice there is going back to what I said earlier about root cause, is looking at the catalogue, looking at the orders that are coming in. So we often find that there's a disconnect between the order's been processed and people like yourselves in finance, that either you've been given the wrong price or Amazon, they've got a price. So when you guys are invoicing, or EDI's invoicing, it's just at a different rate than Amazon are expecting. And it goes all the way back to that EDI gatekeeper process, that if Amazon are ordering at a price that you're not agreeing, then just don't place the order, because exactly as Sarah was saying, when you try and invoice it, they'll essentially reject it, because as far as they're concerned, it's not the right price. And the other thing as well, I'm always working whole pennies with Amazon. They always work in whole pennies. So if you always round up if you've got an issue.
Just Sarah, we had a similar issue last year with around Brexit when things changed into the EU, and it turned out to be a VAT code or a VAT issue on Vendor Central from our side that needed to be updated. So I don't know if that helps or not, but maybe it might point you in some direction.
Okay, anybody else got any comments on that issue of Sarah's?
Any more hands up we haven't covered? Gus?
Yeah, I think we've got Gus next.
Hiya. I was on the fence whether to ask this because it feels a bit cheeky, but I'm going to do it anyway. On the first bullet point, in terms of kind of agreeing what good processes are, and going back to the earlier conversation about kind of Kaizens, whether it's kind of internally led or led with Amazon, does anyone have any kind of checklist or literature or sort of documentation of kind of what to go through sort of bit by bit through the process, kind of whether that's referring to sort of how we set up, how we avoid shortages, kind of some of the wider compliance things? It feels like there's a lot of there's a lot of good information flying around in terms of things that we should be looking at. And I wondered whether there was anything shareable, hopefully without sort of nicking any of your IP, Tim, or asking for a freebie. But does anyone have anything that that could sort of help us kind of go through it bit by bit? Because, like I said, it feels like there's loads of good bits here, and I'm wondering whether they could all be put into the same document.
I'll go first and say no. Only as much as we say. I literally don't work to a document, but I think I said it earlier. The most powerful thing that we often do is have a round table, get everyone in the room, and literally step through every process on Vendor Central and who presses that button, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And I guess the advantage I've got is I understand the Amazon operation, so I can see where problems are. But we often find that there is also a disconnect internally, that someone says, oh, you do that? Oh, that really buggers me up because I have to. And if you get all those people in the room and try and go through the entire process, it's quite a powerful exercise. I think, and I've talked about catalog setup issues previously. I think one challenge that's quite common, particularly for people who sell products in cases rather than single units, is how products are set up. So we've inherited suppliers in the past whereby you've got a case of 6. So Amazon either see that as 1 times 6 or 6 times 1. And there's obviously a price against each of those. So you get a case cost of £12 or you get a unit cost of £2. And often we've seen a mixture of those kind of order types coming through on orders. So it's really important that whoever is setting up lines on Amazon, if you are selling in cases, that you've got that case hierarchy both understood and agreed moving forward, so that your systems and your people know exactly what Amazon are trying to order. So if they are trying to order 1 case of 6, then you're supplying them a case. But if they order 12 times 1, that they actually want 2 cases of 6. And we often see on EDI that there's a conflict there if items are set up differently, that you almost need different rules to accept those. So that's one thing I'd definitely look at, and you can find that on purchase orders quite clearly when you look at the case size and the cost price. It will jump out to you if there's something that's wrong there. So I'd look at that as a key piece of analysis in terms of product setup, and that could be something that an ABS could help you with. So that's a long-winded answer there to this, but yeah, I'd get people in the room and talk through the process. That's what I'd suggest.
Okay, does anybody have a documented process that they're happy to share? I think you can just put it into the chat, actually, if anybody does want to do that. But I guess it may differ depending on what your business is and what you sell, etc.
Sounds really good advice. So the getting in a room and thrashing it out, all of the departments, everybody. So a lot of time that needs. Sorry, the time taken to do that is probably worth it, I would think, in the longer run.
Yeah, and certainly my experience is that you guys from the finance side are often you're often the lone voice at the back, I suggest. A lot of people we work with, the finance guys are the ones that are mopping up the mess, for want of a better term, at the back end, whereas you've got a sales guy or a commercial team kind of running ahead at the front, and usually in between some sort of operations team that are a little bit unsure of what they're doing, so they think they're doing the right thing because they've inherited processes from their predecessor, etc. So we often find if you can find that person who owns Amazon in your business, so there's a key point of contact, and that's someone potentially the sales person who's doing the AVN, and really kind of make it their responsibility to pull that meeting together. Because I don't know, the sales guys often don't see the true P&L, that they're looking at the sales into Amazon, but not necessarily the ledger mess that's left behind at the end. So I think it's really helpful for you guys to be presenting that information clearly back to them, that this isn't potentially as profitable as they think just because they've got a great margin or something.
Yeah. Okay, we've got Marie from Nip and Fab. I can't hear you, Marie. Can anybody hear Marie?
No.
No.
Marie here, Marie.
Marie. Okay, Marie, put it in the chat. Maybe we'll catch you in a minute. We'll just nip over to Nicola.
Just, Tim, you've mentioned the vendor managers quite a bit. And what we have found is that they tend to change quite a bit. So if a vendor manager with escalation issue and they're dealing with it, then they move into a different department or a different category. So you get someone new. They're not really interested in picking it up or dealing with it. How do you overcome that, or is there a way to overcome it?
I think there's a couple of things there. One is very much around making sure that stuff's documented as part of the AVN, so that if someone new comes in, you can point to it and say, look, this was agreed. And we've seen examples where we're going through it with a business at the moment. The exact phrase the vendor manager has used is, we've got a great working relationship. Why do we need to write anything down? Which, and actually since that comment, he's actually moved on. I think that's the real clarity, is getting stuff in writing through email and ensuring that there's a clear process. And again, the only language that Amazon really understand is, put them on stop if it's, or at least the threat of that, and just say, look, this is no longer profitable for us to trade with you because of whatever the issue is, around shortages. Therefore, we're going to have to review, the terms of our sale, the terms of trade with you, because we just can't carry on like this. But I fully appreciate engaging the vendor manager is incredibly difficult because of the time involved.
Okay.
Yeah, any other comments from anybody regarding that subject? No, all very quiet. We'll go back to Marie. Hey there, Marie? No. Oh,
Yes, she's on chat.
So I'm interested to find out how others reconciling Amazon payments with the big volume of chargebacks.
That's the question for the floor, really. I guess how does everyone cope with that? An automated process, a manual process.
Just personally for me, the majority of my chargebacks would be shortages. We have a good accrual system for all of the the vendor management agreements. But with regards to shortages, like in my case, they might pay an invoice in full today, and then in 2 weeks' time, they might deduct something back off that invoice. And in hindsight, the invoice is gone out of our system, so we don't know, we have nowhere essentially to put these, we have to raise a debit note. So we've constantly got debit notes, credit notes on the go in between our accounts. So for me, it's a manual process. I keep everything on an old-fashioned spreadsheet, and that's how I basically just reconcile everything back to the Amazon at the end of the month before I send out their statement. I reconcile it back to their portal, and I can see then that what I have outstanding is what they're claiming is still under investigation. So that for me works. I don't know if anybody else has anything better, a better system.
Just ask a quick question now. Do you send an open statement every month to Amazon?
Yeah, so bizarrely, they continuously ask me for open statements. That was just, I'm on this account about 19 months now. So, yeah, they just started asking for statements, and I'll do them up. They have an actual template that I follow, and I will do up the statements, and I will literally list the invoices. So if an invoice number is 1234, and then they have done a chargeback with an SC at the end of it, I will list it exactly how they have deducted it off their payment, so they can tie it back to their system. And so that's how. So I will change our invoice number from 1234 to 1234 SC, so that Amazon can see it for, that's what they would have deducted in the first place. So that's just my way of managing it.
I think that's a really good way of doing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Does everyone else send regular open statements to them?
Yes, we send statements out. This is Teresa again. We send statements out to Amazon, again, using the template that they provide us with. One of the things that I'm interested in is we leave our deductions and chargebacks on our ledger as debit cash. Does anybody else do the same, or how do they actually process their deductions on their ledger?
We do the same. So if I pull an open ledger at any stage, every single open line item for Amazon is on there. All shortages, price queries, fines at a line item are all recorded on the ledger. It's a huge piece of work.
It is. Yeah.
We basically take the remit and run a wind shuttle we use SAP. So whatever they have done in that payment gets reflected on our ledger.
Yeah, we have our IT team built a report that we literally use off the downloaded version of the remittance advice, and it converts it onto Sage for us with all of the debit deductions on there. So obviously, as you said, because Amazon will repay something back and then deduct a different value, we now have things on our ledger that can go up to 01, 02, 03, up to 9, because they'll take it, they'll pay, they'll take it, they'll pay. And we have SP, PC, we have infraction charges. So it's a constant cycle of the ledger just looks awful because of all the debit cash sitting there.
Yeah. Our IT department is also built as a platform that it connects straight into the Amazon portal, and it basically sucks out all the payment information and downloads it into our system, and it creates debit notes and credit notes for us itself. So it has cut out a lot of work, but it's still a manual process that I have to just watch myself. I can't trust even the system to do it properly, because Amazon are so, yeah.
I hear
you. Just to add what we do from VF, we use SAP as well. We have an additional disputes management system. It's sort of like another transaction in SAP. And so for every single residual item that is deducted in an invoice, we create like a dispute case. So we can then manage that case. So for example, if it is a shortage and we need a POD, we can direct that case to a different department. They can then action it and send it back. If it's credited, then we pick up the credit note, clears the case. So every single item is created individually, but it's a lot easier to sort of track where it's at in the resolution process, who is in control of actioning it. If we have a shortage where, so on an invoice we have an SC and then we get an SCR, but then another SC, we can close the first case and create a new case. So we close it with the repayment and create a new case, but using the references from Amazon, we can track how many times they've deducted against that invoice, and gradually the value gets smaller that is actually open on the account. It's confusing. There's a lot. We have like 10,000 plus items across our company open all the time, but we have like a dedicated dispute management team who basically is in control of coordinating that across the departments and actioning it. So that's how it's messy. Our statement is extremely long. We have a lot of items on the account, but they have like specific reason codes for each type of deduction. So there's a process for each type. So price claims, shortages, chargebacks, they're all processed differently. So they have a different reason code assigned. So it's a lot to manage, but it's a lot clearer, and we can do reporting on it to say, which issues are like impacting the most at any given time. So that's how we do it.
Okay. I think Nicola, have you got any? Was it a no question for you, Nicola?
No, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Is anybody else? Anybody want to share any positives about trading with Amazon?
Yeah, I have one. I actually have to say I find them very responsive when you submit a ticket to them on their portal. They will always get back to you, whether it be good or bad. You'll always get an answer of some sort. So
Well, there's many positives.
I mean, the reality is though, you're all, a lot of you are in quite big businesses, and I'm sure you've seen the sales to Amazon just escalate massively over certainly the last 3 or 4 years, I'd have thought. And sadly, love them or hate them for any particular reason, Amazon are here to stay. And as a consumer, it's just a seamless, easy, frictionless process, isn't it? We've all got the app, we all just buy stuff. It always turns up every single day. We spend all day working from home, just answering the door to Amazon deliveries. That's just me. But yeah, it just works. And as a result, they're winning in so many different sectors, so that they're here to stay. And companies that are hitched to it and have been for a while, and whilst there are lots of problems, there are also lots of opportunities. And we see that massively, just the scale at which the businesses we work with have been able to grow on Amazon. It just outpaces bricks and mortar by, tenfold at least.
It was interesting, Tim, on your slide, you talked about staying above the line. So hopefully we've done that. But when we did Amazon One originally a couple of years ago, 2017, I think it was, we actually started up by saying this is not a bitching and moaning session. And I think today has not been a bitching and moaning session. Hopefully everybody's found it. It's been very constructive. We've got a couple of hands. We've still got some hands up here, Brent. So Jessica.
Hi, sorry, I just had a question on Karen's point there. She mentioned that she found Amazon very responsive. I'm just wondering, does Karen deal with the Amazon EU side, or does anyone have any information on that side? Because when we raise cases or disputes on shortages or fines, they'll say they'll get back to us in 3 to 5 working days, but we could be waiting well over a month. I might chase them and we still get nothing back. Definitely the EU side is much slower than the UK. Just wondering, does anyone else find that?
We see that across the board on all aspects of the operations, deal with them. Germany's probably the best. Germany's their most established market in Europe. So we often find the conversation, if it's through the German account, is very swift and actioned, responses are quick. I think when you're going into some of the newer markets, it's a lot slower. And I think that's just to do with Amazon and the way that the speed at which they implement new sites, new facilities, new countries, new people. They're just throwing resource into situations really quickly, and maybe there just isn't the experience behind it.
Okay, thank you.
And Namesh has come up with a positive. Thank you very much. We'd like to see some positives as the back end of this. So,
I think I just want to kind of expand on that. It's one thing I always say to people when we start working with them is Amazon are really good at paying when they say they're going to pay. So whatever your terms are, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, net, whatever, they will absolutely pay to that, which I think is definitely a benefit. Just on that, is everyone aware of the change to the payment terms that came in a few weeks ago? Resounding silence. So Amazon said, certainly a lot of our suppliers got this. I'm pretty sure it's across the board. So now they're saying that the payment terms are triggered not by the invoice date, but by either the date on the invoice or the date the stock was received, whichever is the latter. So essentially they're buying themselves a number of days extra credit. Now, certainly suppliers that we're working with, because they're consumables, food and drink, I know there's at least one company that's challenging them under GSCOP over that, because essentially they've changed payment terms without any consultation. So I don't know where they're going to get to that. there'll be a bit of watch this space.
Was there a communication on that?
I can find it somewhere. Yes, it came as an email.
Okay.
Does that mean if it sits on their goods inwards dock for 2 weeks,
2 weeks free cash?
That's another 2 weeks added to the 30 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, and if you are, say, on 90 days end of month, then that's potentially driving in another. If that spans over a month, you could be adding an extra month's payment to them.
Yes,
That's why it's been challenged. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
challenges.
Tim. Sorry. Tim, did you say that they're now being triggered? The payment terms are now triggered by the day the stock was received.
It's the latter date, whichever is the latter, is either the day the stock is received or the invoice date. So if you invoice on dispatch, so if you're taking a Monday to Friday cycle, if you invoice at the end of your pick cycle on the Wednesday, for example, but the stock doesn't get there till the Friday, that's the Friday. Whereas if you, I know a few businesses that run a weekly payment run to Amazon. So if you deliver on the Friday, but you run all your invoices on the following Monday, then it'll be from the Monday when the invoice is received. So whichever is the latter. So it's when, so Olivia, so it's when Amazon scan the goods, because that's the only time that they consider it as received at their end. Because if it's just sat on the dock, they don't know it's there.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the date that you actually delivered, it's the date that they've processed and scanned it in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Let me see.
No.
We're trying to end the meeting on a positive, Tim.
Sorry, apologies. Yes,
am I able to just ask a quick question? I don't particularly send them statements, to be fair. I try and avoid them. So where is anybody finding this template then? Because I have recently received some emails from them wanting me to send them a statement. So I think I can't put it off any longer. I just wondered where on Vendor Central you find the template for the statement.
Caroline, they actually just sent it to me randomly one time like that. I was struggling trying to get things sorted, and they sent it to me and asked me to complete it. But I think it's a general statement. I think everybody uses the same template. So I mean, I can send it on to you if you like.
I mean, it's not complex, is it? It's just reference, invoice date, description, value. Yeah.
So
PO
they wouldn't
number.
Oh right, okay. They wouldn't just accept a Excel spreadsheet then, like a download of like your SAP, and then
no, because it has to be laid out in a particular format that they want you to follow, and you fill in a couple of details, but it's not that hard. Like it's quite easy. So
okay,
I mean, if you like, I can forward you on a copy of the one I use if you want to leave your email address in the message box.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen.
No problem.
It's
Thank
also
you.
in the, if you go into the help section under invoices, you'll find the standards template there.
Yeah, if you just search for it, it's got a standard statement of open items template in the resource centre. All right, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the actual email from Amazon, but I can only, I've so far only found my response to one of our suppliers. I'll keep trying to dig the email out and I'll get it across to you guys so you can see it.
If anybody finds it, send it to Brent or myself, and we'll be happy to forward it on.
Will do.
Okay. Any more questions? Any more points anybody wants to make? If not, we'll call a halt. We'll go nice and quiet.
Yeah. I think I'd just like to say thank you very much for today, because that's been extremely helpful. Tim's presentation was great, and to hear everybody else's feedback has been really useful.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
I was going to say on behalf of everybody, a big thank you to Tim. I think that's been excellent. And Tim said that his slides are going to be available to everybody. So we'll make sure that we'll put them into a PDF for PDF format and make sure that you get copies of those. So we'll send them out. So, the other question is,
could I just ask as well, is the recording going to be available to view back? Because there's a couple of people from my company weren't on this call. I really believe that they'd benefit from it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
great, thanks.
I think what we'll say, we'll make the recording available on request. So
great stuff. Yeah.
So I'd send it to Brent or to myself, and we'll send it over. It'll be a big file, I think. So
yeah, I think we might try and find a way of putting a link maybe on my website and a link on Laura's website.
That'd be the easier way. Yeah,
I think it'll send out. It'll, we'll just get all these emails back saying file too big. So we'll try and sort of link out, put it on our websites, and then you can just go to the link and probably just download it yourself. Might be the best way.
Yeah, I'll get that sorted. It's sitting on my laptop at the moment. So
yeah.
So as I say, this was Amazon 3. We've spaced them out about sort of 9 months, a year, and a year between them. So if you think it's useful, do you think we should consider having an Amazon 4 at some time in the future? Do you think would that be?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we can have every other week, but yeah, okay, we'll Brent and myself will have a chat about that. So yeah, so thank you very much to everybody for your contributions today, and hopefully you found it useful. And
just a special thank you to Tim. I think you did more than expected, more than was asked. So yeah, from my point of view, thanks very much, Tim, for taking part today. I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. So maybe we should do a quick virtual round of applause there. Thank you very much. There's plenty of thank yous on there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thanks for everybody, and stay safe. And it's still out there, unfortunately. And we'll let you know about the recording link. And but if you've got any feedback at all on it, please let us have it, because it's always nice to hear. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Laurie and Brent. That was thank you for organising, because it was really good.
And I know what a KZen is, so that's fine. I've learned something.
Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate you.
The best question was, lady, probably 30 experience. She goes, where do I find? How do I send Amazon the statement?
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
When people ask questions.
Brent, Laurie, do you want to stay on for a couple of seconds? Just
Yeah.
You guys want to stay on for a couple of seconds?
Yeah, we're not running away.
Do they accept normal Excel statement? They don't, obviously, and they ask it.
I think these people are just. I think.
I'm just going to stop the recording. Actually, let's try and stop the recording. Stop.